Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. Search suspended indefinitely.
Due to the conditions, we had to pull those rescuers out of that particular area.
Difficult conditions halt the search for 3 experienced climbers near Squamish, now missing for 6 days. Plus, mourning a co-worker and a friend.
Just a huge hole in just our hearts in the space that's our restaurant.
The man stabbed and killed in Chinatown was a chef at a popular Yaletown restaurant, and still many questions surround his death. Also, marking the beginning of the end of World War II.
I learned a lot that night, including what my sergeant told me. If you live for the next 48 hours, you'll live for a long time.
We meet a veteran from Abbotsford, one of 14,000 Canadian soldiers who landed on Juno Beach exactly 80 years ago today.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Tanya Fletcher. Thanks for joining us. We are back in Squamish, where the search for 3 experienced climbers has been temporarily suspended. Ground crews were able to make their way onto the mountain today, but challenging conditions have once again held back the search. Our John Hernandez is there and reports optimism is dwindling now 6 days in.
Search and rescue crews took to the air at first light about 5:30 a.m. Clear skies meant they got their first good look at the top of Atwell Peak this week. Squamish Search and Rescue shared these images over social media, showcasing some of the challenging terrain the mountaineers were up against. They're believed to have attempted to summit Atwell Peak on Friday, but haven't been heard from since. The peak is 2,600 meters high, and the climbers are said to be experienced. Squamish Search and Rescue spokesperson BJ Shute said crews have a sense of the route they might have taken, but it's still a pretty big swath of land.
We were able to get crews into the ground. We were able to work some of these areas with avalanche dogs and with our technicians. However, due to the conditions, we had to pull those rescuers out of that particular area.
By midday, there still wasn't any sign of the mountaineers. The plan was to keep searching by air, but in the afternoon, Squamish RCMP announced the search had been temporarily suspended altogether due to unstable conditions. They say the search will likely resume once they've reassessed those conditions. The heat in particular poses an avalanche risk in the Alpine, and crews have noted there are signs of previous avalanches. However, it's tough to pinpoint exactly when those avalanches occurred, including whether they happened before or after the mountaineers went on their journey. John Hernandez, CBC News, Squamish.
Let's bring in our Darius Madavi for a look at what's happening weather-wise, because they really are at the mercy of Mother Nature here, Darius.
Yes, that's right. So I think what's going to happen over the next few days is going to be a pretty similar picture to today, where the mornings are a great opportunity to get out there and continue the search, because it will be very clear, much like it was today. Very little cloud coming in, even just very light high cloud, not going to affect the search at all, not affecting that visibility. What is affecting the search is these afternoon periods where the sun is really beating down, warming up that layer of snow, because at this time of year, that snowpack is already very unstable. We had very heavy dumps of snow well into the double digits, high double digits, centimeters of snowfall in just the last week on that peak. So very, very heavy snowfall on top of all the snowpack that's already there, already being unstable because of those warmer conditions, means that is putting things in a very precarious spot for that rescue mission, especially as the sun beats down. Overnight periods, as temperatures drop back below to very cool temperatures, you can get that frozen layer on top that sort of holds things steady. As it warms up during the afternoon, though, that frozen layer goes away and you lose that stability. So even over the next couple of days, as we do continue to see very clear skies, this looks like it's just a still image, there we go, because it is going to be so clear over the next 24 hours and into Saturday morning as well, before maybe some cloud moves in later on Saturday. That means conditions are going to remain a little bit difficult in those afternoon periods, and there isn't much that can be done about that, unfortunately. Now, with that being said, it's a very similar picture across southwestern BC as what we just said. Very clear day tomorrow, very clear start to the day Saturday. So for everybody across southwestern BC, don't expect too much activity.
All right, we'll check with you again later in the show. Thanks, Darius.
Thank you.
A beloved chef of a prominent downtown restaurant is being mourned tonight. The 32-year-old man was stabbed to death early yesterday near Chinatown. His friends and coworkers have now gathered at the scene near Union and Main Street. That's also where we find our Janella Hamilton. So, Janella, what more do we know about the victim?
Well, Tanya, we know the victim's name is Wataru Kakiochi, and he was a popular chef at a restaurant called Hapa Izakaya in Yaletown. Tonight, his co-workers and close friends gathered for an informal vigil, laying flowers and sharing a moment of silence here at Union and Main Street, where the 32-year-old was stabbed and killed early Wednesday. His friends tell me he was kind, funny, always lifting people's spirits. He had a personality and a smile that lit up the room, and for many, he was like an older brother. He was also a talented musician who loved to play guitar, often jamming out at staff parties or with coworkers at the end of a long shift at work and at the beach on his days off.
I don't know. Everything, thinking, but I don't know. Why, Wataru? He's so perfect.
Now, what more do we know about the attack itself, Janella? Have police revealed a motive or any possible suspects?
No, on both fronts, Tanya. We also don't know the circumstances around the killing, whether it was a random attack or if those involved knew each other. What we do know is Kakeuchi was out with some co-workers in Gastown Tuesday night and was believed to be on his way home when he was stabbed to death. In light of this tragedy, officers have ramped up patrols in the neighborhood, and they're asking anyone with information or dash cam footage to contact them. In the meantime, Vancouver Mayor Ken Sim has put out a statement offering condolences to the victims' families and friends. He describes Kakeuchi as a beloved member of the city and a victim of senseless violence. We also spoke with the owner of Hapa Izakaya restaurant, who says the young man was an upbeat, hardworking worker. He had been working with the restaurant since 2015 after he moved to Canada from Japan, which is where his family is still located.
It's just one of those wrong place, wrong time, but it could happen anywhere. And fortunately it happened here and to our guy, but he loved this city for a reason, and
He says Kakeuchi was between work permits but had planned to return to the restaurant as a chef, with plans to stay in Canada permanently. For now, Tanya, lots of questions that still haven't been answered.
All right, thank you so much, Janella. Our Janella Hamilton reporting live from Chinatown tonight. Let's take you to the Okanagan now. A driver and a passenger have been killed in a car crash on a racetrack in the town of Oliver. This happened Wednesday evening. They were traveling in the same vehicle at the Area 27 Motorsports Park. The driver lost control and failed to navigate a turn on the course, causing the vehicle to crash into a cement barrier at high speed. The BC Coroner Service is now investigating. A number of combat sports in BC are going to be put under tighter scrutiny. Thousands of amateur athletes compete in martial arts province-wide every year, and those who test their skills in the ring will now have more protections. As Liam Britton explains, it's believed an alleged in-ring tragedy is what sparked the change.
Last October, Genwan Lei, a grad student and novice athlete, competed in what was called a semi-contact kick light tournament in Burnaby. His family claims in a lawsuit it led to a severe brain injury, and doctors say he's unlikely to recover. Now, BC's athletic commissioner has expanded powers to scrutinize and sanction amateur martial arts competitions in the province, thanks to an order in council. Previously, he only had powers over specific sports like kickboxing and mixed martial arts, but now all amateur competitions are under his purview.
There's new types of sports creeping in that kind of skirt the wording in the criminal code, so there was a need to kind of put something in place that would regulate it and make it safe for the competitors.
He says some have been fudging the rules of regulated sports, simply labeling them with new names like continuous sparring.
We're starting to see people getting injured, and then we started looking at what was in place. And for a lot of these events, there was no medical in place or there was no proper referee training in place.
Lay's family is suing a number of people and groups connected to the fateful competition. They allege organizers of the kick-light tournament were in fact running a kickboxing tournament, which would have required the commissioner sanctioning.
Calling an apple an orange doesn't mean that it's an orange, it's still an apple. But if there was any ambiguity in some of these amateur combat sports, what I would say is there is no room for ambiguity with the wording of this new order in council.
That allegation has not been proven and organizers deny it, but the family lawyer believes the case has already led to reform.
It would be nothing but a major coincidence if this tragedy wasn't what spurred on this change.
BC's kickboxing organization says there have long been concerns about safety standards at unsanctioned tournaments, including so-called light contact or semi-contact events.
Sometimes there's people refereeing that are volunteering and they really shouldn't be doing it. The other thing to consider is the medical team on site. Like, do you have a proper medical team? Do they have concussion training?
Lay is now back home in China. He's been getting experimental therapies thanks to online fundraising and can now open his eyes and open his mouth in response to questions.
While it's a long way from complete recovery, it's that small step that gives some real encouragement.
There's optimism in BC's martial arts world that these tighter rules will help amateur athletes when they step into the ring. Liam Britton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, in Vancouver, more than $650,000 in cash, drugs, and stolen property have been recovered since March. It's all part of a sting operation against so-called fencing. That's where criminals resell shoplifted or stolen items.
We saw an increase in not just thefts from retailers, but violent thefts, people using weapons, things like needles, knives, various tools, physical force, whatever they could to overcome resistance when they were attempting to shoplift.
Police launched Project Barcode early last year to combat violent and chronic shoplifters at retail stores. Since then, 1,200 arrests have been made and nearly $1.5 million in stolen goods recovered.
Shoplifting has been around forever and will be around forever. The issue that Retail Council of Canada and its members sees is the violence, the increased aggressive violent behavior in our communities, for our people, our employees, and our customers. That's what's got most of their attention.
The Retail Council of Canada says it has since created an advisory council that includes top retailers all brainstorming ways to prevent shoplifting. More than 24 stolen high-end vehicles have been traced back to 2 men. This is where some of those vehicles were recovered from. Late last month, 2 men in their 20s were arrested in Surrey and charged with 14 criminal offenses. During their investigation, the Integrated Municipal Provincial Auto Crimes Team recovered 29 stolen vehicles from shipping containers at BC ports, valuing a combined $2.5 million. A BC soccer fan wants to certify a class action lawsuit over Lionel Messi's no-show. Tens of thousands of fans were left disappointed when the superstar did not play as expected in the match recently against the Vancouver Whitecaps. As Jason Proctor tells us, some claim they were duped into buying a ticket to see Messi play.
Here at BC Place, it is a messy situation. Messi as in Lionel Messi, the World Cup soccer superstar, who was supposed to be playing here at BC Place Stadium on May 25th with his Inter Miami squad versus the Whitecaps. Problem is, 2 days before the game, Miami announces that neither Messi nor 2 other superstars will be playing in this game. Now, that obviously upsets fans, one of whom says in a proposed class action lawsuit filed in BC Supreme Court that he paid 10 times the amount for tickets for the game, paying $404 for 2 tickets that he basically says he would have paid a fraction for if he'd known Lionel Messi wouldn't be here. Now, he calls this a classic bait and switch. The bait being Lionel Messi, the switch being this last-minute change that sees just a normal Whitecaps versus Miami game, which Miami won, by the way. This fan is now hoping to win his lawsuit on behalf of himself and thousands of other people that had tickets to the game. He is looking for either a partial refund or a full refund. We'll see where it goes. Jason Proctor, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, BC's official opposition is pledging to provide families childcare subsidies so that everyone is paying $10 a day. That's something BC United says the BC NDP has promised but not delivered on.
We are going to fix this problem immediately because at the rate we're going, all of their children, all of their kids will be graduating high school by the time those spaces are in place under this NDP government.
Leader Kevin Falcon says their plan also promises to increase childcare spaces province-wide, integrate care centres into more public facilities, and boost wages for childcare workers. A new report is highlighting the positive economic impact of LNG projects in this province. An Indigenous group says its LNG partnerships have been a major boost to First Nations communities. But as Saurabh Sandhu tells us, some environmentalists say there are better options than liquefying natural gas.
The push is on to sell the estimated economic benefits of liquefied natural gas for BC, including a $4.1 billion increase in GDP and more than 34,000 jobs. The details are part of a new report from industry supporters who say there are also big opportunities for Indigenous communities.
We're getting to equity ownership, we're getting to loan guarantees, we're getting to spaces where we have our own source revenue to build up our community, to build up our economy, build capacity within our communities.
The report aims to highlight opportunities for LNG as the industry pushes to expand exports and capture a larger share of the global market.
Natural gas is better than alternatives, and that's why it's sought after. So Canada has a unique ability because of its geographic position on the Pacific to get sought after product to market.
Environmentalists say LNG isn't the future, pointing out it's still a fossil fuel.
It's based on a false premise that there's a huge demand for LNG and that demand grows into the future, when we know, in fact, that renewables they're so cheap, they're so affordable, that they're really displacing fossil fuels and gas around the world.
Green says the focus for BC should be on investing in renewable energy projects.
We need a whole lot of electricity, so we need to be building more wind farms, solar farms.
LNG is part of the plan right now for BC's future. There are 6 export projects being planned in the province, with the first and largest expected to start exports next year in Kitimat. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, some good news for SkyTrain users. Service at King George Station is set to resume this Sunday after 6 weeks of repairs. A number of infrastructure upgrades that had closed the station are now finished, including track replacement, elevator and escalator repairs, as well as lighting and power rail upgrades. "80 years ago to the day, Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy to liberate France from Nazi Germany. It was the beginning of the end of the Second World War. Our Michelle Morton met a veteran from Abbotsford today who's being honored for his bravery and service that culminated on June 6, 1944.
Joseph Vogelsang and 14,000 other Canadian soldiers landed on Juno Beach on June 6, 1944.
Because I learned a lot that night, including what my sergeant told me. If you live for the next 48 hours, you'll live for a long time. And I learned a lot in 48 hours.
Before moving to BC, Vogelsang grew up in Saskatchewan and decided to volunteer for the Canadian Army when he was 17 years old.
I had no idea what it would be like to be in a front line with artillery and all kinds of grenades and whatever.
Now at 99 years old and surrounded by his family, Vogelsang's bravery and fight on the front lines are being recognized in the liberation of France, as he was decorated as a Knight of the Legion of Honor by the Consul General of France.
Pretty proud. He did a lot and we never knew about it. So today we're getting a glimpse because he never talked about it at all.
This morning I looked at my 15-year-old grandson and I thought, I can't imagine 2 years from now he would be serving on the front line somewhere. Like, you just can't, it just doesn't comprehend. We live such a different life because of them, you know, because of the soldiers like my dad.
Vogelsang says he feels overwhelmed by the recognition.
There's a lot of people who are in the same boat as me, or more so, who are not recognized, and that's not fair, I don't think. Although I'm appreciative of what they are doing, or did.
Do you feel that you share this with them?
Yes, much so, much so.
Michelle Morton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, 40 years ago, hundreds of veterans made their way to France to remember D-Day, but not everyone made that trip. Veterans also gathered at a local Royal Canadian Legion to remember that deadly day in Europe, the turning point in the Second World War. And reporter David Lamb spoke to them way back in 1984.
Inside Legion Branch 16 in Vancouver, the mood is relaxed, but they're all thinking the same thing. Tony Carano in the blue jacket and Dutch Ramsey fought in the Canadian Scottish Regiment.
Here's where we landed, right here, Juno Beach. Juno Beach.
They were 24 when they landed at Juno. Tony's brought his dress cap and medals, and they remember.
I think about how lucky I am to get back. And I think about the friends that we all had over there that never come back.
The last thing I wanted to see is the swastika there instead of a maple leaf hanging on our poles. Of course, I think it was well worth it.
Was it worth it all? I think it was.
Other veterans of the war who weren't at Normandy think so too.
I can appreciate what the boys went through over there to bring up the subject of retaining democracy in this country and all over the world.
And as far as Normandy goes, this was our democracy won back.
I'm glad it worked our way instead of the other way. And it was a tough grind. And we did the best we could.
Are you sentimental about it at all?
Yes, I am. Because I lost a lot of friends there.
The emotions of that day felt strongly so many years later, and we'll have more on this 80th anniversary of D-Day coming up later in the show. And coming up next, have we reached the end times of department stores? With Vancouver's Nordstrom long gone, there are now rumors a newer chain might call that space home. We'll talk to a retail expert after the break. Welcome back. While some big department stores shutter, one is actually expanding. A prominent Canadian retail chain is taking over 2 Toronto mall spaces once held by Nordstrom. As the CBC's Sophia Harris tells us, Simons plans to spend $75 million on the Ontario expansion, increasing its store count in this country to 19.
Luke Gillett wants to wear a pink suit to his upcoming wedding, so he came to Simons.
So why do you shop here?
I like supporting Canadian-owned businesses, so that's part of it, but the selection is great.
Simons is a Canadian success story. The Quebec-based retailer sells clothing and housewares at 17 stores across Canada. It's set to open 2 additional locations next year.
We're very excited about these 2 new stores in Toronto.
It's a bold move in a tricky market, plagued with rising costs, fickle customers, and giant online competitors.
We have a lot more choices as customers today. We have digital shopping. We have ultra-fast fashion players. Whether you agree with their practices or not, customers are shopping these websites.
Plus, Simons is taking over part of this ill-fated section of downtown Toronto's Eaton Centre, previously home to department stores Eaton's, then Sears, then Nordstrom, each of which shut down. And Simons' next-door neighbor will be the Bay, which has closed several locations.
The customer is evolving, the customer is changing, but the department store is not evolving with them.
Simons insists it's different. Sales grew over the past 2 years by 3%. The CEO says the retailer remains relevant by staying in touch with customers.
How do you know that in a year from now you won't be going out of business doing liquidation sales?
I guess you never know, right? The reality is we have to stay competitive. We feel we know the market and we listen to our clients.
Some downtown Toronto shoppers hope Simons gets it right.
I hope, but I think the space is like haunted.
Simon's got a lot of great brands. They have great prices. I think they're gonna be the ones that stick around.
Simons thinks so, but in the fickle fashion market, ultimately the customer gets to decide.
Good, eh?
Sophia Harris, CBC News, Mississauga, Ontario.
Let's look at this through a BC lens now. In Vancouver, the Nordstrom at Pacific Centre closed last year. It had also replaced Sears and Eaton's before that. So what's next for that space? Retail strategist David Ian Gray joins us now for some insight. Thanks for joining us today, David. Now, there's already a Simons store on the North Shore, yes, but what is the likelihood of a location opening up in downtown Vancouver as well?
When Nordstrom departed and people were speculating on this, some of the wise people I confer with, and I agreed with them. I thought Simons could be one of a very small handful of likely candidates. And the Park Royal location isn't exactly prime for attracting large volumes of traffic. So it wouldn't be a bad location for them. And it's the same landlord that they're dealing with back in the Eaton Centre in Toronto.
How risky is it, though, given this is, a Quebec-based retailer, so still focused domestically within Canada, it seems? How risky is it to move into a space like that, as we heard that might be cursed, that we've seen so much turnover of those big box stores? Is that a risky move for them?
They couldn't take over the full space. The size that they have in the Eaton Centre is about half of what Nordstrom vacated. And in the Eaton Centre, they've split it with Nike in Italy. So the space was far too big. But the thing about the downtown Vancouver Nordstrom was it was perennially one of the top performers in the Nordstrom chain. So, you've got that, but we've also now got a post-pandemic sort of drop in demand for fashion. So we'll see. But they're expanding, and it seems in my books quite likely that they would be looking seriously at that space.
You touched on it there, and we heard in that piece, with online shopping now, it seems, first of all, the turnover of perhaps bricks and mortar stores closing and being replaced has become a trend. So is the department store model a thing of the past, and what would their strategy be to get those customers back to make it successful?
Well, it's funny. I for a long time I've thought it's a bit of an archaic model. I don't know if anyone would really invent a department store now like that, like a very large format multi-department store. when we have so many enclosed malls and so much option. Like, it's not as convenient as it once was. However, sometimes being the different animal in the forest is not a bad thing. And as everyone else tends to vacate the space and the bay is languishing, Simons does seem to have some vibrancy, and location's everything. You know, that spot is actually in the heart of Vancouver. So I think they've got a shot in the near term. In the long term, whether we need department stores, you just need really large populations to support them.
Well, time will tell. Thank you so much for your insight today.
You're welcome.
That's retail strategist David Ian Gray joining us. Well, still ahead, an Israeli attack on classrooms in Gaza reportedly killed Hamas militants, but questions as well about why so many children also appeared to be injured. That's coming up. Welcome back. Let's head to Ottawa. And 2 days after it was revealed that some members of Parliament collaborated with foreign state actors, the controversy still shows no signs of abating. The CBC's Evan Dyer has more on the political fallout.
Are you prepared to release those names? Yes or no? No.
Government and opposition members sparred today over whether the government should name the MPs who, according to a report released Monday, have acted on behalf of foreign governments and in some cases accepted money from them.
Let's face it, Minister, I think if there were six Conservatives on that list and no other Liberals, we would have had the names. Let's be honest here.
Thank you, Mr. Caputo. Mr. Chair, I'm not going to violate the Security of Information Act and risk prosecution for a political stunt.
The report makes clear that foreign actors have targeted more than one political party, giving examples of Han Dong's Liberal nomination in Toronto and 2 Conservative leadership races. Canada's spy agency made it clear today it doesn't want the names out in public.
The Security of Information Act is there to protect sources and methods, but also protect against disclosure of information that would be injurious also to the people. And I think we have seen, the impact of the leaks and when classified information is released.
The RCMP also said it won't be releasing names.
I will not be confirming or denying anything with respect to individual politicians or in general.
Government members said that Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre could easily get the names himself by asking for a security clearance, like some other party leaders who can request classified briefings.
I do have top secret security clearance, unlike the leader of the Conservative Party.
Conservatives say security clearance is a trap that would prevent them from speaking in public.
There's a proverbial muzzle based on what is learned in that briefing. Is that not right?
There are absolutely limits to what the leader of the opposition will be able to say.
But, says the spy master, he would be able to act.
There are other mechanisms that have been referred to, including for the leaders to have the information and make decisions. Someone that may not be allowed to run, may not be allowed to sit in a caucus because of the information, the classified information that has been used.
Bill C-70 would change the law in a way that might allow information like the names of those compromised MPs to be released in the future, even if it would normally violate privacy laws, as long as the public interest in knowing clearly outweighs the invasion of privacy. The government said today it wants to have that bill in place by the next election. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
A major water main break in Calgary has left hundreds of homes without water and triggered an emergency alert with the city's water supply critically low. Officials have been urging residents and business owners to conserve water today.
Every drop of water will count until we get this repair done. And we need everyone in the city to pull together while we were in this critical time to help us save water.
They're urging Calgarians not to wash dishes or run appliances that use water for now. They've also banned outdoor watering to conserve water that could be needed to fight fires. A boil water advisory has been issued for Bowness in the western part of the city. The cause of that water main break isn't yet known, but officials have described it as large and complicated. Overseas, the Israeli military says it carried out a precise pre-dawn strike against a Hamas target in central Gaza, a school they say housed militants. But Hamas officials say the strike on a UN-run school killed more than 30 people, including 23 women and children. They say the school was filled with Palestinians seeking shelter. As the CBC's Chris Brown reports, Israel says some classrooms were used by militants. And a warning, this report includes the voices and images of badly injured children.
Israel's military says the rooms in the school turned shelter where its missiles struck were hiding Hamas militants. But at the nearby hospital, many of the casualties were children with catastrophic injuries. Lots of rubble fell on my legs, Ahmad al-Makdabi said. My father was crushed to death. The head of the UN agency that used to run the school said up to 6,000 displaced people were sheltering there. It said it couldn't verify claims that militants were there as well, but Israel's military released images of some of the fighters it said it killed without mentioning civilian casualties.
We conducted the strike once our intelligence and surveillance indicated that there were no women or children inside the Hamas compound, inside those classrooms.
The U.S. said Israel needs to offer up a better explanation for why so many civilians were killed.
If you have seen 14 children die in that strike, that shows that something went wrong.
The ceasefire proposal released last Friday is being pushed hard by the Biden administration. but so far does not have firm yeses from either side.
They're fully aware of the kind of Israeli ambivalence with regard to the plan.
This analyst says Hamas wants a permanent end to the fighting in exchange for releasing Israeli hostages in the first phase of the deal, which Israel does not want to agree to.
They want to be able to operate more or less at will. So they want a ceasefire deal that doesn't necessarily end the war. And Hamas is very leery of that.
Canada, the UK, and more than a dozen other countries have issued a joint declaration saying now is the decisive time to make final compromises to close a deal. The fact that neither side has said an explicit no is keeping precarious hopes alive. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
Still to come, experts are concerned about an invasive species spreading across the U.S. Still, they say these spiders aren't quite as dangerous as they look. We'll explain why after the break. Welcome back. They might look intimidating with those big, brightly colored bodies and 8 long legs, but Joro spiders are not as dangerous as they look. Still, experts are concerned about the spread of this invasive species across parts of the U.S. But as Chris Reyes explains, why Canada will likely be spared over the next few years.
Just by the look of it, a Joro spider will grab your attention with its tennis ball yellow stripes, 4-inch legs, and when they're babies, their ability to move through the air, covering several kilometers like they're flying. Rasib, the owner of NJ Pest, explains.
They are able to use their silk to make almost like a parachute to be able to harness the wind's energy to float and travel in those means. And that term is called ballooning.
They're not poisonous to humans, but they are predators that can disrupt food webs and the ecosystem.
Yeah, we got 2 right there up under our tent. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 over here.
That's just one Georgia homeowner showing them off in his backyard, along with a makeshift contraption he built to try and get rid of them.
We've been fighting these things for years, trying to figure out how to kill them.
The Joro spider arrived in the southern U.S. more than a decade ago from their native Asia, and the concern ever since is that they'll spread to the rest of the country and beyond. So far, Sieb hasn't received any calls about the creatures, but he did write a blog earlier this year to warn his customers about them.
For whatever reason, my blog article is blown up with all this attention regarding the Joro spider.
What is the one message that you want to get to the public now that it is hitting headlines and people are watching out for them?
So can it bite or sting you? Yes, it can. Is it enough to puncture our skin? Maybe. And then you'd probably get some localized swelling and some pain, but that's really about it.
Despite their flamboyant qualities, the Joro spider is shy and won't likely try to go indoors or anywhere near people.
They generally keep to themselves. They're not usually aggressive.
But they can be a nuisance, and in that case, take cues from that Georgia homeowner and his trusty spider trapper.
All right, got him. It works.
Who gets them one at a time before they can balloon away. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
Not quite the invasion of the locusts like in the end times, Darius, but wow, those are some brightly colored spiders and they can parachute.
Yes, not expecting the very, very large one that showed up right there. Yes, Joro spiders, I, to be honest, did not know much about them, but I did do some reading, and I found one study from the University of Georgia that called them, this is a direct quote, the shyest spider ever documented. So that probably puts you at ease. They're probably more scared of you than you are of them. And also their venom does not pose any risk to humans or pets even, so you don't have to worry about your little fluffy friends. So shouldn't be too much of a problem. Just don't like looking at them either. Now, let's turn to the weather, which I would prefer to look at, because look at that. Not even any cloud in the right now, and not any in the forecast either. If we run this ahead, beautiful blue skies tomorrow morning, same thing tomorrow afternoon. If we run this ahead into Saturday, sort of in the overnight period, some cloud starts to move in for parts of the island and then continues to move in. But this is only just brief times, especially in the morning where we see a little bit of high cloud. Sunlight will still filter through that as we continue to see this move in, though. Later in the day, Saturday is where we see that cloud really start to move in. So that will be a bit of a cloudier end to the day on Saturday. But Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, even into mid next week, really just looks like mixed skies. Not really any precipitation on the way. There's a slight chance early next week, but for now it is looking dry. That's really the story across the province as well. You can see here, very little precipitation on the way until we get into the very end of this model run, is the end of the weekend and into early next week, where some of it does start to impact the coast and maybe break into some parts of the interior. But even that is far from guaranteed at this point. We're in a very dry period, although it's not going to, the ridge of high pressure we have right now isn't going to last too long. It's going to build over the province, keeping us very dry and very sunny for a little bit, and then quickly fading away into the further eastern parts of Canada, while that low pressure system sweeps in a little bit more. But I wouldn't expect any drastic changes, to be honest. Not looking like it's going to be pretty sunny and warm for the next few days. We'll see those temperatures come up tomorrow, come up again on Saturday, and then fall a little bit on Monday. Sorry, not Sunday. Monday. Oh, it's not going to show it. That's fine. Coming down a little bit on Monday. Sunday for some places, especially here, maybe just a couple degrees, and then a little bit cloudier in parts of the southern interior. But generally, this is the story for the weekend. Lots of sunshine, just some cloud moving in later in the end parts of the weekend. And so this is our forecast. Nothing but sunny. Nice and easy, Tanya.
We are ready for that. Thanks so much, Darius.
Thank you.
And let's resume our D-Day coverage now. Second World War veterans, global leaders, and many more gathered to commemorate the 80th anniversary of D-Day in Normandy, France today. The CBC's Julia Wong is there as well with more on the solemn ceremony marking their bravery, service, and sacrifice.
The mood was somber and reflective as thousands of people gathered in Normandy to commemorate the anniversary of D-Day. The ceremony at the Juno Beach Center involved flyovers, readings from students, and a round of applause as the names of 13 Second World War veterans were read out loud.
Mr. William Seifried.
A handful of those veterans landed here on Juno Beach on D-Day. Later, those veterans who were the VIPs of this ceremony were brought down to Juno Beach for a visit. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said that Canada was a small country that played a big role on D-Day, and he says Canada remembers those soldiers' stories and their sacrifice.
Democracy is still under threat today. It is threatened by aggressors who want to redraw borders. It is threatened by demagoguery, misinformation, disinformation, foreign interference. We must all continue to stand for democracy day in and day out. We owe it to future generations, and we owe it to the great women and men in uniform who sacrificed so much for our collective freedom.
We spoke to people in the crowd, and many of them came from Canada because they specifically wanted to be here to mark this milestone. There were people of all ages from all different backgrounds. Here's what they had to say about what it meant to be here.
It's incredible to think about the sacrifice that so many made for the freedom of our country and our world. And it's very hard to imagine what this would have looked like. It's such a peaceful place right now.
It was so overwhelming, because I only seen it on TV and I read about it in books and learned about it in school, but to actually be here and step on a beach where so many Red River Métis, you could say they were youth, gave up their lives for the war.
You were saying it's just hard to describe everything that you've been feeling over the last little while. Tell me more about that.
Well, it's hard to explain because it's coming out of nowhere, so you don't know why, but it's just a feeling, It's really hard to explain.
Ceremonies to mark this anniversary will continue on Friday, including a commemoration at a Canadian war cemetery. Julia Wong, CBC News, Juno Beach, France.
Still ahead as we approach the Stanley Cup Finals, one Oilers superfan in Kelowna has found a green way to support his team. We'll meet him coming up next.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
CBC Vancouver is the exclusive media partner of the 2024 Indian Summer Festival, July 4th to the 14th. The festival showcases over 80 artists across a spectrum of arts, from live concerts to discussions and visual arts displays. Tickets at indiansummerfest.ca. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter and keep connected with us.
Well, Canucks fans may start a turf war over this one. A hockey fan in Kelowna is showing his love for the Edmonton Oilers in a creative way.
He has mowed the team's logo right into his front lawn. Check it out.
Well, we were Oiler fans when we lived in Edmonton, and we moved out here in 2005. And next thing you know, 2006, the Oilers are making a run for the Cup. That's when it first came about. We cut it in 2006. It was okay for first go around. It was a little rough around the edges, but we've had the last 3 years to perfect it. And we basically put it in when they are making a run in the playoffs and they get out of the first round. I just use my Honda lawnmower. Just adjust the heights and walk around with it and take your time. Really, it's all done freehand. I just look at the picture, at the logo, and envision it on the grass and just start to cut. Start with the E, because that's pretty much in the middle, and then work both ways so you don't run out of space.
It's just a lot of fun to see people driving by, honking, taking pictures, woo-wooing out their windows. We do get a lot of support. People always ask if, we get eggs thrown at the house or anything like that from Canucks fans, and thankfully we haven't had any of that. We've been surprised, I think, more so by the amount of Oilers support there is in Kelowna, either from people visiting or people who've transplanted like us from Edmonton. So yeah, lots of photo requests or people stopping by and taking pictures. Really, really wonderful.
We're having fun with it. It's just, go with your team. Everyone has to cheer for somebody, and if they're hockey fans, and now the Canuck fans are Canadian fans. So I think we're now a unified crew. Go Oilers! Let's make it happen.
Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
Jessica Chung will have your next local news at 11 right here after the National. And we leave you now with some shots of downtown Vancouver on the sunny afternoon. Good night.